Hey everyone, welcome back to Karenology. This story will have you shaking your head in disbelief. It was 98 degrees, sun drilling down like a welder's torch, when I found her at my gate, screaming through clenched teeth like a banshee in pearls. Karen Lynch, president of the Homeowner Association. Half her lipstick was melted down to her chin. Her floral blouse clinging to her bulk like wet paint, and her clipboard was shaking in her grip like it knew what was coming. Bastos. You will open this gate, Mr. Brooks. This is a violation. You're in direct contempt of community access regulations. I was elbow deep in the guts of my father's old irrigation pump. Sunburnt, sweat pooling at the small of my back. I didn't flinch. Just slowly rose, wiped my hands on a rag, and took the few steps to the gate. Looked her dead in the eye. Karen, I said, calm as an oak in a storm. This isn't your land. It never was. And you're not stepping 1 foot past that fence. She leaned forward, her breath reeking of chewing gum and fury. We have jurisdiction. That building violates Section 12.4b. Unpermitted structural restoration is strictly prohibited. I smiled. That calm smile you only get after 62 years of living through hurricanes, wars, and women like her. You want to test me, sweetheart? Go ahead. I turned, walked back to my tools, and that was the moment she snapped. I heard her slam the gate. Then the shriek, "I'm calling the police!" She did. 7 minutes later, a dusty sheriff's cruiser rumbled down the gravel road. Deputy Randall stepped out, tapping the roof twice with his knuckles before straightening his belt. "Afternoon, Marty. Karen." Karen launched into a tirade so shrill birds took off from the oak tree behind my shed. Words like trespassing, vandalism, and community safety flew at Randall like darts. He just looked at me. I gave a shrug. She wants to inspect a shed my father built in 1964. Claims it falls under HOA control now. Randall sighed, took off his hat, ran a hand through his thinning hair, then turned to Karen. "Ma'am, as far as I know, that structure predates the HOA by a few decades." She stammered, tried to hand him papers. He didn't take them. If you have an actual legal order, you can bring it to the county clerk. Otherwise," he let the words hang in the humid air. Then he laughed. Just a single low chuckle. Got back in his cruiser and drove off, tires kicking up dust. Karen stood there, trembling, clutching her clipboard like a shield. For a moment, I thought she'd cry, but no. She turned and stomped off, muttering something about, "This isn't over." I knew then. It had just begun. That night, I sat on the porch, cracked open a beer, and stared out at the silhouette of the old workshop. Its roof caved in like a punched-in hat. My father built that place by hand. Every beam, every bolt. He called it the line. Not just the edge of our property, but a promise that no one would cross it. And now, decades later, they were trying. With bylaws instead of bulldozers. With passive-aggressive memos instead of wrecking balls. The war had started, and I wasn't going to blink first. The next morning, I found yellow caution tape fluttering across my driveway like crime scene ribbons. It stretched from the rusted gatepost to the corner of my fence, staked in with metal pins that hadn't been there yesterday. Attached to it, Laminated sheets flapped in the breeze. Notice of Probationary Compliance Zone. Homeowner Association. Probationary Compliance Zone? What the hell did that even mean? I stared at it for a long minute, coffee cooling in my hand, the sky already a pale, angry blue overhead. This wasn't just a bluff anymore. Karen had made her move. I stepped over the tape, tore it down with one tug, and tossed it into the barrel by the shed. The laminated sheets followed, fluttering like dying moths. I lit a match. The plastic curled and blackened. 3 hours later, I got the first call. Unknown number. A man with a nasal voice identifying himself as Associate Compliance Officer for the association. He informed me, in a tone so polite it reeked of contempt, that tampering with association property would result in escalating sanctions. Ach, this is not association property, I said. This is my land. Been in the family since 1951. Mr. Brooks, please understand, this is not personal. We're just following policy. The boundary lines have recently been updated to include transitional maintenance jurisdictions. You people make up words like kids playing lawyer. He tried again, gentler this time. We really don't want to pursue formal action. You come back with tape, I'll replace it with barbed wire. Click. By late afternoon, I saw them. Karen and her new flunky. Some pasty guy in a polo and slacks, holding an iPad like it was a badge. They parked at the end of the gravel road and started walking the edge of my property, pointing and whispering. I didn't approach. Just stood there, arms folded, watching, like a coyote watching a drone fly overhead, wondering if it drops poison or just noise. That evening, I dug out the old maps. My dad kept everything. Survey markers, county plats, hell, even receipts for lumber. I spread them out on the dining table like war plans. The line was clear. The shed, the driveway, even the peach tree out front, all inside our lot. But there it was. A red-stamped document from 1993. Subject to community zoning reinterpretation. I blinked. That wasn't there before. It looked recent. Too recent. Someone had slipped a forged copy into the pile. I sat there a long time, listening to the cicadas scream. A knot formed in my gut. If they were willing to fake paperwork, this wasn't going to be a petty HOA spat. This was a siege. I called my neighbor, Harry. Vietnam vet, 70 if he was a day. He used to help me mend the fences back in the 2000s. Always wore a baseball cap that said, "Get off my lawn," like it was a family motto. He picked up on the second ring. Harry, you seen any HOA folks snooping near the old pump station? Pause. Funny you ask, he said. Karen came by last week asking if she could check my back gate alignment. Had a guy with her. Looked ex-military, but soft around the middle. Didn't like his eyes. They forging county records now. Another pause. Yeah, he muttered. Figured it was coming. They tried that crap on Myrna 2 years ago. Said her chicken coop violated noise ordinance. Chickens, Marty. I felt a chill. She moved, didn't she? Yeah, sold cheap. Karen's cousin lives there now. We both went quiet. When I hung up, I poured myself a double bourbon. The sky had gone dark and silent. But inside me, something was just starting to stir. They weren't after compliance. They were after land. Inch by inch, tape by tape, they were claiming property the old-fashioned way. By bluff, pressure, and paperwork. And I was the next square on their board. But they picked the wrong damn player. By Friday morning, my mailbox was stuffed with glossy printouts. 5 identical letters bearing the Homeowner Association's seal, each stamped urgent in thick red ink. The language was familiar now. Citations, code infractions, failure to comply, and the ever-present threat of community-driven escalation. It was psychological warfare in paper form, meant to overwhelm, to exhaust. But I'd seen real war. This was a slow bleed. Still, it worked on some level. I felt the pulse in my jaw ticking a little faster as I sat on the porch, flipping through the accusations. Unauthorized materials, excessive noise, non-regulated restoration. No mention of actual damage. No mention of human decency. Around 10, the rumble of tires on gravel caught my ear. Not the sheriff this time. It was a silver crossover with HOA logos slapped on the sides like a politician's bumper sticker. Out stepped Karen, clad in navy pants and a sun hat with a chin strap, followed by a younger woman with a blank face and a portable printer tucked under her arm. They didn't even knock. Just marched to the gate, planted a plastic sign in the dirt. Zone pending review. I stepped out slow. Didn't say a word, just stood there. Karen glanced up, gave me a brittle smile. Mr. Brooks, we're moving forward with procedural enforcement. There will be a mandatory hearing. There will be no hearing, I cut in. Not on my land. She pulled out a phone, tapped the screen. You're being non-compliant. I'm recording this for documentation. Good, I said. Get a close-up of me not backing down. The younger woman didn't even look up. Just printed out another notice and clipped it to my fence. Karen leaned in. You think you can win this, but I promise you, non-conforming properties don't last long in this community. Then maybe it's the community that's wrong. She stared for a second too long, then turned, strutted back to the car like a queen denied her crown. That night, I couldn't sleep. The heat pressed down like a wet blanket, and the distant buzz of insects only made the silence louder. I got up around midnight and walked to the shed. The air inside was thick with sawdust and rust. My father's workbench was still there, dented and oil-stained, the old vice grip frozen mid-turn. I ran my hand across the edge of the table, felt the scratches and burn marks, each one a story. I remembered being 10 years old, trying to fix a busted bike chain while my father pretended not to watch from the porch. He believed in self-reliance. Said the world would always try to push you back, but the trick was learning where to plant your feet. I looked around the dim space and knew what I had to do. If they wanted to bring this fight into the light, then I'd drag them there by the ankles. The next morning, I drove into town. Found a kid at the hardware store named Ricky, who knew about drones and topography scans. Said he could map a property line down to the inch. You want just a visual map? Or like legal grade? He asked. Legal grade. I want something that stands up to scrutiny. Ricky grinned. I got you. 2 days later, we had our first flyover. Ricky manned the controller, standing on the roof of my truck while I watched the feed on his laptop. The drone zipped over the trees and followed the fence line like a hawk. The image was crisp, detailed. Every fence post, every crack in the shed roof. You're clean, he said. Everything sits square inside your parcel. But that wasn't all. As the drone turned back, it passed over Karen's property, There, tucked behind her house, was a paved patio that extended a good 10 feet over the legal boundary. I smiled. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about leverage. Ricky transferred the data to a flash drive and handed it to me. "You gonna use this?" I nodded. "Not yet, because if there's one thing I learned from my father, it's that real power doesn't come from showing your hand. It comes from letting the other side think they've won." And Karen? She thought she was winning. Good. Let her keep thinking that. The week dragged like a rusted plow through hard soil. Every morning brought a new envelope. More violations. More invented infractions. They were laying it on thick now. Unauthorized use of landscaping tools. Excessive vehicular presence. Unapproved roof materials. The roof, mind you, was half collapsed and hadn't been touched in years. They were trying to bury me in noise. Noise and paper. And it was working. Just not the way they intended. See, there's something about pressure that does funny things to a man. Some fold, some fume. Me, I get quiet, focused, like a coiled spring waiting for the moment to snap back. Midweek, I caught sight of Harry again. He was walking with a limp. I hadn't seen before, hat pulled low. I crossed the road, called out his name. He hesitated before looking up. Hey, Marty, he said, voice low. "You all right?" He glanced back at his house. "I'd keep my distance if I were you," I frowned. "You're not sounding like the man who used to shoot possums off his roof with a BB gun." He gave a dry chuckle, but it didn't reach his eyes. They came to me. HOA. Said if I keep talking to you, I'd lose my maintenance access. Said my garage is non-compliant now. My jaw tightened. "You serious?" They're targeting anyone who's close to you. Myrna, then me. Next, it'll be the Thompsons. I took a breath. This wasn't just about my shed anymore. They were isolating me. Strategically. Making an example. That night, I walked the perimeter of my land with a flashlight. Every marker, every post. Making sure nothing had been tampered with. About halfway around, I found something odd. Fresh boot prints. Not mine, not Ricky's. Heavy, patterned soles. Military issue. They led to the back of the shed, stopped at the old fuse box, and vanished. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. Whoever had been there didn't break in. Didn't take anything. They just looked. Marked. The next morning, the sign was up, right at the edge of my drive. Community Development Initiative Zone Pending. With the HOA seal, in bold. I called the county office. Got transferred 4 times. Finally landed on a woman who sounded exhausted and young. Said, "That parcel isn't listed in our initiative plans," she said after a pause. "There's no active development zone registered for that block." Then who authorized the sign?" "Not us." I thanked her and hung up. Heat rising in my chest. They were forging legitimacy now. Counting on folks not checking. That afternoon, I invited Ricky back. This time, we didn't fly the drone. We mapped boundary overlays using GIS tools, pulled county plat maps from the 80s, and matched them with drone footage. It all lined up. The land was mine. Every inch. But more than that, we uncovered something else. Karen's back patio, the one I'd spotted earlier, had a drainage line rerouted years ago. That line cut across my property, underground, without a single permit. This could get her fined, Ricky said, eyes wide. Or more. But I didn't want fines. I didn't want her to pay some fee and walk away smug. I wanted her to feel what she'd made others feel. Cornered. Exposed. So I waited. 2 days later, she returned. This time, not with a clipboard. With a camera crew. 3 people in branded polos, holding mics, filming her as she walked up to my gate, voice sweet and syrupy. We're documenting the restoration of community standards. Homeowner associations like ours are the backbone of safety. I stepped out slow, arms crossed. She smiled, like we were old friends. Mr. Brooks, would you care to comment on your non-compliance? The camera turned to me. I looked right into the lens. You filming? Good. Tell your viewers this. My name's Martin Brooks. I own this land, and I don't answer to a paper crown. I turned and walked back inside. Let them eat the silence. That night, Ricky sent me a message. Just 4 words. She took the bait. I smiled. For the first time in days, I felt the burn of momentum. She thought she was winning, but she was walking straight into the trap. 2 days after her little film debut, Karen made her boldest move yet. I woke up to the sound of diesel engines rumbling like a threat from the woods. 3 white trucks bearing the Homeowner Association's logo were lined up along the road, hazard lights blinking like beacons of bad news. Out stepped a crew of 5. Men in matching khaki uniforms, clipboards, and tool belts. I stood at the edge of my porch, coffee mug in hand, watching as they walked straight toward the old workshop. No knock. No notice. Just boots on gravel and a sense of ownership they hadn't earned. The leader, a barrel-chested man with wraparound sunglasses, raised a megaphone like he was hosting a parade. Per community directive, this structure has been deemed unsafe. We are here to initiate preliminary compliance abatement. I laughed, loud and sharp. You planning to bulldoze history or just steal it a piece at a time? Karen appeared from behind one of the trucks, like a stage villain making her entrance. Same smug smile. This time, dressed in a tailored tan jacket and slacks, her clipboard holstered like a weapon. Mr. Brooks, she purred. This is for your own safety, and the safety of our community. I stepped down from the porch, boots crunching gravel. You come near that shed, and you're going to regret it. One of the men shifted uncomfortably. The others paused, waiting. Karen raised a hand, signaling them to stop. She tilted her head. Let's be reasonable. If you agree to sign over access for inspection, we can avoid escalation. There's no escalation, I said, because there's no authority. Not here. Not on my land. She held my gaze for a long moment, then smiled again, too wide. Well then, I guess we'll have to escalate. They left after 20 minutes of posturing, but not before nailing another laminated notice to my gate. This one had bold, aggressive red lettering. Emergency review order. Compliance imminent. I pulled it down, studied it. The formatting was sloppy. No county seal, no signature, just a barcode and Karen's initials scribbled in the corner. I knew then it was fake, but the problem wasn't the paper. It was the perception. They were making it look official to everyone else. If they kept the pressure long enough, they'd win by attrition. I couldn't let that happen. That night, I went back to my father's workshop, lit the old lantern hanging from the crossbeam. The air smelled of oil and cedar, and old promises. I opened the floor hatch. Beneath the boards was the original land charter. A worn, yellowed document, edges frayed from age and sweat, hand-signed by the county commissioner in 1951. Map attached. I'd kept it sealed all these years because Dad told me, "You only draw your ace when the table's on fire." Well, the table was ablaze. I made copies. Not digital, not scanned. Photocopies. Then I wrapped the original in wax paper, placed it in a fireproof envelope, and buried it under the floor again. 2 days later, Karen was back. No trucks, no megaphone, just her and a man in a sharp suit with the face of a vulture. He introduced himself as Community Legal Liaison. Tried to hand me a cease and desist letter. I didn't even open it. Tell your client, I said, that fake titles and fake documents don't mean anything on real soil. He blinked. Sir, this is a legally binding... You'll get my response tomorrow at your so-called headquarters. That night, I stayed up with Ricky. We drew up a boundary diagram using the drone data, overlaid it with the original charter. We color-coded every inch. Mine in deep green, Karen's in red. The next morning, I walked into the Homeowner Association's office, dropped the rolled-up diagram onto their front desk. Karen was behind a glass wall, pretending not to notice me. The receptionist frowned. "Can I help you?" "Tell your queen the land's not hers. And if she wants to keep pretending it is, she'd better be ready to explain why her new patio's draining illegally onto my property." The receptionist opened her mouth, then closed it again. I walked out slow, purposeful. Behind me, I heard the phone start to ring. The game had changed, and now it was mine to play. You ever feel the air shift before a storm? That crackle of static that crawls across your skin, warning you something's coming? That's what the next few days felt like. Not quiet, never quiet, but heavy, like the town itself was holding its breath. Karen didn't show her face. No trucks, no letters, no uniformed clipboard drones. Just silence. And in a war like this, silence is never peace. It's planning. I stayed alert. Patrolled the fence line morning and night. Ricky came by twice to help me install motion sensors and trail cams. He was excited, almost too much. "You're turning your land into a fortress," he joked. I didn't laugh. Because I wasn't playing defense. That weekend, I caught something strange on one of the cameras. A man, middle-aged, bald, wearing cargo pants and gloves, creeping along the edge of my western fence just after midnight. He didn't touch anything, just examined the base of my corner post, then walked off into the woods. I sent the footage to Ricky, who enhanced the video. What we saw made my stomach twist. The man had a tape measure. And he wasn't measuring my land. He was marking it. The next morning, I drove to the county recorder's office. I needed verification. Real maps. Official lines. The clerk behind the counter, a young woman with kind eyes and a raspy voice, recognized my name immediately. "Hey, you're the guy fighting the Homeowner Association, huh?" I didn't answer. She pulled up records, tapped keys, squinted at the screen. Well, she said, "nothing new's been filed, but I can show you what's been requested." She slid a form across the desk. It was a pending zoning adjustment request, filed not under Karen's name, but by a third-party corporate entity, one I didn't recognize. But the mailing address? That was the same P.O. box used by the HOA. They were trying to reroute the boundary lines, behind my back, off the books. I thanked her copied the document, and drove straight to Harry's. He looked older than ever. Sunken eyes, barely opened the door. You need to be careful, he said without greeting. They're squeezing folks now. Got a letter yesterday saying my well might be non-compliant with regional water codes. They want to test it. Said they'd need access for a week. I nodded. They're not testing water. They're testing fear. He glanced over his shoulder. I didn't tell you this, but Karen's got someone new helping her. Not HOA. Someone with money. Been seeing strange cars outside her place. Late. No logos. Private backing. That changed everything. Back home, I laid out everything on the table. Original charter, drone footage, county records, zoning request, Karen's fake signs, the drainage maps. I looked at it all and realized something. They weren't just after my shed or my land. They were running a pattern. Squeeze, isolate, flip, sell. Karen was turning old lots into community projects and quietly transferring them through shell companies. This wasn't about bylaws. This was about real estate. And I was the last domino. That night, I called Ricky. I need your help, I said. With what? I hesitated, then said it. We're going to give them a taste of their own strategy. He laughed, nervous. You mean like bait? Actually, better. We're going to set the trap. But first, we're going to light a fire. Just enough to make them feel invincible. Ricky went quiet. Then, all right, old man. Let's make some noise. The next morning, I sent a registered letter to the HOA office. Short and polite. Dear Homeowner Association, in light of recent developments, I am officially withdrawing all passive cooperation with your organization. Future correspondence may be directed to my legal proxy. Have a blessed day. No proxy existed. But they didn't know that. That same day, I planted a new sign outside my fence. Bold letters, hand-painted. Private land, not subject to HOA. Violators will be documented. Karen would see it. She'd take it as weakness, as defiance, and she'd respond. That was the point. Let her believe she still held the reins, because when she pulled them, I'd be holding the knife. The trap snapped shut on a Wednesday. I woke up to a voicemail from Ricky. Just one sentence, hushed and sharp. She took the bait. They're moving tonight. That day crawled by, slow and tight. I spent it walking the perimeter, checking every camera feed, every motion sensor. The shed sat quiet under the trees, shadows pooling around its corners, like it was waiting too. The plan was simple. Karen thought she'd broken me. That the withdrawal letter meant I was preparing to fold. She'd spent weeks poking, prodding, measuring, bluffing. Now she was coming to claim what she thought was already hers. Only I wasn't alone anymore. Ricky had installed 2 hidden trail cams just behind the workshop. Infrared, motion triggered. We'd marked them as defunct electrical boxes. Inside the shed, under a tarp, sat a decoy permit folder, a perfect forgery of a transfer of ownership, dated, signed, sealed with a county. Looking stamp Ricky had mocked up from public forums. A casual search would make it seem like I'd already caved. Midnight. Silence. Then, the crunch of tires on gravel. I sat in the dark, watching the shed from the porch, holding a flashlight like a rifle. 2 silhouettes emerged. One tall and stiff, the other shorter, moving with that bureaucratic confidence I now knew too well. Karen and her new muscle. The bald man from the video. They didn't knock. They moved straight to the back fence, flashlights sweeping low. I saw Karen lean over the corner post, whispering to the man, pointing at the drainage pipe. Then they moved to the shed, tried the door. It opened. Ricky had made sure of that. I watched as they stepped inside. Just silhouettes now, swallowed by the dark. A minute passed. 2. Then the flashlight started jerking around like fireflies in a jar. They'd found the folder. Karen stepped back into the open, phone to her ear. She was smiling. I could see it even from the porch. I waited until she turned her back. Then I hit the switch. Every camera, every sensor, every light I'd rigged came alive at once. Floodlights, sirens, the sound of shutters clicking like gunfire. Karen screamed. The bald man dropped the folder. I walked out, slow. Flashlight aimed low, hands visible. You want to explain why you're trespassing? Karen spun around, pale and furious. You set us up! No, Karen. You set you up. She stepped forward, wild-eyed. This is entrapment. You can't. Yasu, you broke into a private structure with intent to commit fraud. The cameras caught everything. She faltered. This won't hold up. The HOA... There is no HOA here, Karen. Not on this land. Not according to the county. I confirmed it this morning. The bald man raised his hand slightly, glanced toward the woods. Walk away, I told him, while you still can. He did. Karen stood there, alone, her mask cracking. The queen without her court. I didn't yell, didn't threaten, just handed her a manila envelope. Inside, a printout of her illegal drainage connection, the forged documents she'd filed under a shell company, and a letter addressed to her financial backers. Anonymous, but sharp. You send that? She hissed. Not yet. She stared at it, shaking. What do you want? I didn't answer. Just walked back to the porch, sat down, and watched her leave, in silence. The next morning, a moving truck pulled up to Karen's house. She didn't even say goodbye. Karen left faster than I expected. Within 48 hours, her house was stripped of life. The white SUV disappeared. The banners in her windows, the HOA plaques on her mailbox, even the fake potted shrubs she used to line her porch, gone. All that remained was silence and an empty lawn that now felt like a grave. But the war wasn't over. Not yet, because Karen was never the real head. She was just the smiling mask on a deeper face. The corporate entity behind her, the shadow group funneling her initiatives, hadn't left. And now, they were exposed. Ricky came by the next day with a USB drive and a grin that made him look 10 years younger. Found what we needed, he said. Their filing address links back to a development firm. Elman Ridge Partners. Registered in Delaware. Classic move. I raised an eyebrow. Why Delaware? Less transparency. It's where companies go to hide their teeth. We sat down and mapped out the timeline. Every community improvement project Karen had initiated in the last 3 years, lined up with sudden sales, evictions, rezoning requests. And in each case, ownership transferred through at least one holding company before ending up in Elman's pocket. It was a land grab, wrapped in bylaws, sold as beautification, and my land was supposed to be the keystone. They overplayed their hand, I muttered. Ricky nodded. Want to go public with it? I shook my head. No, that's what they'd expect. We don't go loud. We go smart. That night, I took a drive. The county archive was mostly digital now, but the physical office still kept paper on file. I requested a file on Elman Ridge. Development proposals, land use history, zoning requests. The clerk, a wiry man with too many pens in his shirt pocket, took a while. When he returned, he handed me a thin folder. Inside was a letter from 1998. Elman Ridge had tried to develop out here before. Got denied due to floodplain regulations and high-risk terrain, but that language had vanished in recent documents. Someone had erased history. The next day, I made an appointment. Not with lawyers, with a surveyor. He met me on site, clipboard in hand, boots caked in dry mud. We walked the property, step by step. He took photos, measured angles, scanned elevations. Adi, this whole area's unstable, he finally said. You can't put high-density structures here without reinforcement. I smiled. But if someone tried to, say, without permits, he whistled. They'd be liable for damages. Big ones. Especially if someone flagged the risk and they ignored it. That was what I needed. Leverage. The next morning, I packaged everything. The drainage photos. The rezoning map overlays. The letter from 1998. The surveyor's report. And a single-page notice. Notice of intent to file. Personal liability, claim regarding environmental risk, unauthorized drainage, and subversion of zoning protections. I didn't send it to the HOA office. I sent it directly to Elman Ridge Partners. Registered agent, certified mail. 2 days passed, then 3. On the 4th morning, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside, a short statement. Masafi Irchbichuks. We acknowledge your concerns and recognize the outlined liabilities. Elman Ridge Partners has decided to formally withdraw all development initiatives related to your property and surrounding parcels. No further action will be taken. This matter is considered closed. I read it twice. Ricky popped by that evening with 2 beers. I handed him the letter. He whistled. So that's it? No, I said. That's the end of them, but not the end of us. We sat under the stars, quiet for a long time. Then he asked the question I'd been avoiding. You gonna rebuild the shed? I looked toward the dark silhouette of the workshop. I think I have to, because some lines aren't just drawn in dirt. Some have to be built beam by beam all over again. Fall came slow that year, like the land itself was learning how to breathe again. The mornings turned crisp, and the old peach tree by the fence dropped fruit onto quiet grass. For the first time in months, the wind didn't carry tension, just the sound of leaves loosening their grip. The HOA never sent another letter. Karen's name stopped appearing on any local rolls. Her house was sold off-market, rumored to be in foreclosure. No ceremony, no explanation. Elman Ridge dissolved its local branch a month later. No development signs, no construction, no zoning battles, just absence, like none of it had ever happened. But I still woke up early, still checked the fence line. Old habits from an old war. Harry came by once. We didn't say much. He brought over a jar of pickled beans and sat with me on the porch, watching the sun crawl over the hills. You built a wall they couldn't see, he said. I nodded. Only way to stop something invisible. He tapped the railing. They'll come again. Maybe not here, but somewhere. They always do. The workshop took 6 weeks to rebuild. I didn't hire a crew. Just Ricky and me. A few neighbors who didn't need to say why they showed up with tools in hand. We didn't talk about what happened. We just hammered, sawed, measured. Every board was memory, every nail a decision. I kept the old vice grip, left it bolted to the bench like my father had. One day, while we were fixing the rafters, Ricky asked, "Why fight so hard for this old place?" I didn't answer right away, just looked around. At the tree line, the open sky, the worn dirt path leading down to the creek. When I was 12, I said, I came out here with my dad. We'd just had a blowout fight. I thought he hated me, but instead of yelling, he brought me here. Said this place was his anchor, that no matter how the world turned, this shed, this land, it stayed his. I paused, voice catching. He gave me that anchor, and they tried to take it. Ricky just nodded, kept hammering. When the final board went up, we didn't celebrate. We didn't pose for pictures. We just stepped back and looked at it. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't new, but it was ours. The next morning, I painted a sign and hung it on the front. The line, simple, unmistakable, not a threat, a reminder. Because some battles don't end with banners or lawyers or applause. Some end when a man plants his boots on the dirt, looks the world in the eye, and says, "No further." And this time, the world listened.